Good morning, everyone. My name is Bill Nguyen, Director of Nguyen Art Foundation. First of all, I'd like to thank all the speakers and all the audience for being here with us this early morning. Welcome to the Afterlives of Live Performance, to exhibit or not to exhibit. This online conversation between curators Vân Đỗ, Teng Yen Hui, and Kasamaponn Saengsuratham, or Waew for short, is part of a series of public programs surrounding our current exhibition at Nguyen Art Foundation, the Footlook Project. I am so happy, so glad to have this chance to bring together the three curators and their projects from Vietnam, Thailand, and Singapore, and to shape their shared interests into this collective dialogue that we're going to be having with them today. In different ways, their curatorial works approach performance remains, archives, and reactivation from different contexts and scales. Yet they all share a sensitivity to how performance continues to live on beyond the moment of enactment. I'm just gonna quickly introduce them. Vân Đỗ is a Vietnamese curator based in Bangkok. She is the initiator of Footlook Project. This project grows out of the long-term practice of the performance collective Footlook, and more broadly asks how performance art can be remembered, revisited, and shared through exhibition, archives, and other formats. Waew is an ethno-curator whose practice is rooted in ethnographic curatorial methods, focusing on cultural politics and identity within modern and contemporary art in Thailand and Southeast Asia. She initiated Live Art and Live Worlds of Chumpon Apisuk, a multi-layered project based at BACC in Bangkok that encompassed an archival exhibition, an open access website, public programs, and experimental formats such as a board game, which she'll talk about in detail today. Teng Yen Hui is curator and manager of collections at Singapore Art Museum. Prior to taking on curatorial work at SAM, she worked independently on writing projects and exhibitions. She recently launched her exhibition, The Living Room at SAM, exploring how museums might collect, care for, represent, and reactivate performance-based practices. The living room here is conceived as a way of being, a model for how an exhibition might gather people, hold ideas, and remain open. We will start with each speaker giving a presentation on their respective projects, followed by an internal discussion between the four of us, after which we'll open up the room to receive questions from you guys, our lovely audience. Once again, please feel free to use the chat function at the bottom of your screen to share your feedback and to ask any questions, which we will read aloud during the Q&A. I will now hand over the floor to Waew to present her project. Please, Waew. I think your mic is muted.
Sorry. Oh, maybe it's too early for me. And so, okay. Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here today. So I'm presenting you to you guys about the Chumpon Apisuk House, and this is our website, and you can check our website here. It's our Chumpon Apisuk House.bacc.or.th. And so my talking will be 5 parts, and I will just tell you very short about what I do, and maybe after that we can just talk it deeper if you have want to know about each part of it. So, but actually, I will start with the idea of doing this website, and that's a reason that why I show you a website first, because the website you are seeing is part of the research project. Actually, we got support from the Contemporary Art Promotion Fund, the Office of Contemporary Art and Culture under the Ministry of Culture, and the Education Department of BACC, or Bangkok Art and Culture Center. So at the basic level, the project is about the building a publicly access archive of Chumpon Apisuk work, and especially his performance art. So we have like so many thousands of his work in the website, and of course, like because like, and moreover than that, the project is driven by the education and public program, and so we got all the funding from the public institution. Everything we do after that I will show you about is open and free access, and that include the research, the archive, the exhibition, the workshop, and even the board game. So, but I want to show you that all of these developed, all the program that I do is developed by and developed through an educational framework. So our purpose is to keep Chumpon legacy can be shared openly and reach audience beyond the art world. So not only for the art circle or Thai art scene, but also for everyone in the country. Even mostly we do in Thai for the program, but the website will be bilingual, Thai and English. And actually, I don't know, like for us in Thailand, but actually for the art history, we can say that Chumpon is very widely recognized as one of the pioneer of the performance art in Thailand and also in Southeast Asia. So for more than 60 years, he has used performance art as a way to question society, create experimental space, and also like connecting people allow across culture and geography even now. Because like, so I think like when we think about the archive, so and combine these two work together, like archival and performance art, and also we have like a conversation about it, but it's not about an object, not only an object in itself, but it's also about like the documentation, the recording of his performance art. So the archive cannot relying on the documentation alone. That's why. So after this, I will talk about my approach. So I think like thank for your guys and Vân Đỗ a lot, like for invited me to this talk, because like I don't have time to read things or what I do, like we have to, when we got funding from the from the government, everything have to do, the time is very limited, and we have to release the project and we have to end the project at the end of the year for last year. And so this is the first time that I have time to rethink about it again, and I just like to tell you guys that I combine three approach to the project. As you can see, actually it's come from my ethnographic research and curatorial practice, and also an education and public program with the outreach. So that's why this is my first start with the project. The ethnographic research is how we digging into his archive, and after that, the curatorial practice come with the idea of how I present and represent Chumpon Apisuk. So this is very, very, like even when we decide this website, it's actually from his work, like this logo, like we try to like keep him like still very contemporary young man, even now, like now he about almost 75 years. This is the photo from last year. And as you can see, I will show you this one. The design of the logo is come from his very famous work. If you're familiar with Chung Hun project, maybe you can. It's come from his the work that he. This come from an umbrella and a chair. Yeah, and everything is about a house. And I will show you guys why it had to be house and why I decided that suit him, that still be him, not only my archive or BACC archive. And this is that's why the ethnographic research is very very important, that because I have to find his identity, and also I have to represent him in the future as well. So I use the Chumpon Apisuk house. You can see like it's a branding of him, and we can use this logo in every process after this. And after that, and because of like that, I told you that we working closely with the education department. That's why everything that we do, we have like the outreach by purpose of how we're gonna do this, and who is our audience in each program. And after it, I will share you about like the Jumpon Apisuk house a little bit. That I mentioned before that we try to represent Jumpon Apisuk, but when we have to think about the title of the website, we have thinking about a lot about how this will be this website, or actually it should be a platform, not a website, that represent him. And you can see that the way that I share his project is with like เวทีสมัย Tableau Society Concrete House Asiatopia. Actually, you might familiar with the Asiatopia, and for the เวทีสมัยis a activity that he did in the early 80s. Tableau Society Concrete House actually is like his space, and he always open a space and invite an artist to share an idea or performance as well. Even like now, he live in Nan province in northern part of Thailand, and he still like open his house and for friends to come all over the world, and to do like a residency program, a program with a local community in Nan province as well. And so that's why I think like he's the one who love open a house and invite everybody or anyone or the performance artist like to contribute something or create something new in his house. So that's why I think like the house is very very fit for him. The house is like very represent his character, and he's willing to do with the open with the other people. So that's why we think that the website will be like will be also open for everyone to join us as well. And actually it looked like it's completely website to you. I don't know that it's not completely. It's not finished yet. We can add a lot of blog, and we can add like like this is like our stepping point, and this is our first step to that we organize the archive, but still we have a lot to do more, like, and we can talk later that I want to add more in this website. And for when we sing, I will show you guys about this. And from my curatorial point of view, I think that I not only interested how Jumpon how I'm not only like research about Jumpon performance practice, but I think that what is important for me is how Jumpon practice can be understood to many layers for the people who don't know him anymore, and not only through his performance, but also to his personal object or other artwork that he made. And that's why it become like many form when we have to represent him. Yes, you can see this. So that's why I try to keep his legacy as he become an artist, and more than that, not he also an activist and a writer as well. He writes a lot, like a poet, like he's love to write a poet, and he actually he's based from the he used to study under Tang Zhang during his earliest time, and so that's why for the earlier parts of his life as an artist, he used to be a painter before. So like now he's still like working as a performance artist and also do some painting and also installation art. Yeah. So that's why it's just like when we have to like do a presentation of the or launch the website, we're thinking about like, oh, should we do some exhibition? So that's why it become an archival exhibition of him, and but it's fun in a way, like I can work beyond the database, and I have to like in because of his artistic practice start at the 70s. That's why in the exhibition I do a timeline of his life that combine his exhibition history along with the some object that come from actually it's a material related to his performance, so it's become like a small object. I will show you like the exhibition photo. So it's so lucky for me that I work with the educational department. Oh, this is the one that I told you guys. His quite own painting, while he's still like influenced by Tang Zhang. These are all old poster, all the material. This is the one that we like let people can open because we just copy it. and the real ones the still in our this is the small object that small like I think that what is fun for me, like he really loved to combine the material into his performance, right? And he's still keeping it. So it will be like really old one. And this is a door that so you can see like it's a paper, all of the paper here is a timeline. It's quite long. Yes. And so this is like but it's quite the we just like put a timeline all over the room because he has been like have involved in like I think almost 1,000 festivals around the world, and so it's quite then the timeline allow us to see how his practice developed in parallel with the global performance art history, and so and but I think it's quite hard to. No, it's not hard in that way, but it is like his practice always involve or reflect on the political or the situation at that time. So that's why I have to do like the timeline will be parallel with the event and the social context, not only in Thailand but around the world. So if you pair right his performance, it will connect it to the context fit right away. But you have to like understand that what happened that time and why he performed that project. And because of, as I mentioned again, that we think about the education and accessibility as a key point. So we don't want that this project to speak only for the researcher or the people inside the art world. So that's why we try to reach the different audience, like students, young people, educators, and or people who may not even know what performance art is. That's why the archive expand for more and more. You can see that not only the exhibition as well. The other one that we try to do is the open call for the young artists and work with the Jumpon Artistic. And it's very fun, you guys, to know that I can show you that this will be during the workshop, the open call workshop with a young. I think like the generation gap is quite big, like a Gen Z with a grandpa, but it's fun and it's they got a lot of like people involved, and a lot of them just asking like during the workshop, like we got a question like from the I can say that he's a master of performance art and he still like keep his practice until now. So for the young, they were always asking like, how do you become a long-lasting performance artist, or how do you like how Jumpon sustain a practice over a lifetime? And I think that he inspired a lot of for this group of very close workshop together. And that's for another one that I do is a board game, and which really like. So when we decide to do a board game, like it's not like because like when we're working with the archive, we are dealing about the past and all the old material, right? But we don't want to like we want to passing his legacy to the even to the present. So that's why the board game is about the art action and the performance art world, and it's quite I think like it's quite successful in a way that we invite like a young and a non-art people to get to know what is performance art, and for the board game we not only do about Jumpon, but we working on the 11 artists in Southeast Asia and invite everyone to get to know like how to be an performance artist. It's like a journey of the artist, like have to send a proposal and what to do, and or you have been canceled during the while you perform, something like that. It's not talking about a serious work, but it's like getting everyone to know the word performance art. And because we are now like we have AI, we have Google, so I think like I'm not like the one who try to teach what is performance art, but I just invite everyone to know, do you know this artist? And you can search him. You can dig in more in by yourself. And we just like we just like try to introduce this performance to him. And so this is all we do. Like it should be at 3. What happened? Here. So we do like 3 projects together in one project, one big project and sub project together. And then actually, but in the end, for the conclusion of my talk will be like actually, if I will be try to be like transparency about the reality of this big project. It is the limitation of it is all of the project that I done is quite a research and fund-based initiative. So that's why like a part of the ongoing support for educational department of BACC, we don't receive a long-term funding for elsewhere. So this is quite hard for me when doing an archive or even a website, you know, because the funding will be year by year. And for last year we got the funding, but this year we not receive a funding at all. So we always have to like look for a funding elsewhere for makes this project can be continued. So that's why I think that it's a good way that I think I also want to still open the house, Jumpon Apisuk House, for everyone can collaboration with us. And not only like a funding, but also we can do like a program together, because like it just for me is I just like thinking about, if we not think about only about the project or the research, but when we collaborate with the educational department, and it is quite important, it's fun for me that all the projects that we do, we have to thinking about how we can outreach this project to the audience. And this is a core that we love to do, and we start with this. And so that my project, and I think I will try to for the board game this year. Because like we have really limited budget, as you can see that we only do in Thai, but this year we try to do an English version of it, and we will put the game into the website as well, so anyone can print it and pay by yourself. It's quite fun, and everyone just always asking me like, why everything is free, even the workshop is free. And because we get funding from a tax from Thai people. That's why it's free. But I think but it's very fun, like, you know, like we can invite everybody to do like play together. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Wow, what a fun exhibition. I mean, I wasn't aware that the exhibition came after the archive.
Yeah.
But I think that's something that is something that I would like to pick your brain during our discussion.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing about your project.
You.
I can't wait to play the game with you next year or this year in English. And learn more about not only the Thai art, the Thai performance art scene, but also because you had said that the game also includes histories of performance art from other countries, right? So can't wait to play it. We'll now have our next presenter, Yen. Please, the floor is yours to talk about the living room. Thank you.
Okay, is my screen showing?
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. All good, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. So we'll move from Chumpon's house to a living room. All kinds of very intimate, personal, but also shared spaces. So before I begin, I just wanted to share a photo from the very first work of performance that I remember seeing. And this memory only came up in conversation with Bill when he was in Singapore, I think last week or 2 weeks ago. So I thought I would include it. So this photo was from 19 April in 2012. and it was a performance that took place as part of the opening event of the late Nguyen solo exhibition at SAM. The exhibition was titled Lucid Dreams in the Reverie of the Real. So I was there, and for a good part of the evening, the performance entailed Li Wen and fellow artist Jason Lim just taking turns to perform each other's work, trading each other's visual language for their own. And this was how the performance ended. Li Wen held a bucket over Jason's head and then poured paint on him and turned him into a yellow man, an image that is now very much inseparable from Li Wen's practice. So at the time, I was, of course, much younger, and I just started working in an art gallery and kind of still quietly questioning my life choices about a career in the arts. And as I witnessed that performance, I think something in my interior world definitely shifted. And I remember walking home that night, feeling kind of dumbstruck, not really being able to articulate what I had seen. And then later on that night also, I posted this picture on Instagram, and it has a very unsubtle filter that is unmistakably of a millennial aesthetic. But I saved it with a quote from Li Wen for kids. And the quote was, "It is not that artists want to change the world, but the world may change us in ways that we are not willing to accept. Therein lies the need for resistance and the purpose of our work as artists. Without really trying, we change the world." And I think that was the first time that I experienced what a performance could do, the way that it could charge or change the atmosphere of a room, and really the way that it can bypass the intellect and just really hit you on a more effective register. So the living room is the third and final chapter of a 3-year collaboration between the Singapore Art Museum, Seoul Museum of Art, and the Queensland Art Gallery and Gallery of Modern Art in Brisbane, Australia. So across this project, the 3 institutions were really drawn together by a shared struggle, which was how museums might collect, care for, and also represent performance remnants in a meaningful way, right, to audiences. Because performance, by their very nature, is inherently bound to time. It is ephemeral, and it's very much resistant to permanence. So the uniqueness and power of a performance really lies in its immediacy. It is, shaped by the relationship between the performing body and its audiences. But then the moment that ends, right, that liveness also ends. So the question really that we were thinking about was, how can we bring back that liveness into the room? So this line of thinking quite naturally led into the concept of the living room. So it's a play on words, of course. But then it is also inspired by the living room of a home as a space that is private to each of us, but then it is also shared because it is a space where, we invite people over, we have them gather, sit together. And in a very similar way, I suppose, people also gather around performance, right? Around a moment that is equally fleeting, but also very deeply felt. So as performances took place in the space, it was also my hope that the room would then come alive and also change over the months as works continue to change and shift in the space. So I am just going to run through some visuals of the exhibition as I talk through them. First, I'd start by saying that the works were largely drawn from the 3 collections, with also some additional loans and commissions from artists. So here you can see the introduction wall. We created a landing space to create the feeling like you're just about to enter somebody's home. So here's a view from the other side with a work by Lee Kun Yong from Sema's collection. So I was cautious of wanting to design a living space, but without leaning into the domestic connotations of one. So I worked with an interior designer and graphic designer duo, Wink and Farrell, who proposed that we fabricate our exhibition structures a little bit differently. So they would resemble furniture, but then we won't rely on anything that was store-bought. So this was also a kind of way to create familiarity while also hopefully keeping a certain distance, right, from the idea of a literal home. So a lot of thought was put into exhibition design, and this shade of green also that you see throughout the exhibition space was chosen deliberately. It is actually, it's very reminiscent of public housing units in Singapore, especially in the 1990s. So we hope that it would kind of register there subconsciously for some of our visitors. So right now in this image, you see there's a table that's there in the space with books and a computer. Visitors are very free to use this area, and through the computer they can access Kagoma's Asia Pacific Trinale archives. And this was through a portal that the Kagoma's library team had specially adapted from the original for us just for this exhibition. And it is really a truly amazing resource with documentation that goes all the way back to the very first APT, which I think started in early 90s, 92 or 93, and or maybe earlier, I can't remember. But anyway, our reason for including it here was also as a way to think about how an archive could catch all these, moments that are ephemeral, moments that don't or maybe cannot find their way into a museum's collection for one reason or another. But the same way, it was also kind of us wanting to allow visitors to just trawl through these materials at their own pace, and in doing so, to briefly, inhabit the position of a researcher, like all of us looking into a performance archive, for example, just lingering, browsing, and trying to make connections in maybe a more unstructured way. So we left chairs around the room to encourage people to just, to linger, to stay for longer. They could, of course, move them around. So it's an intimate show that features 10 artists plus the APT archives, but it was very important that we had a selection of works that showed the diverse ways that performance art has been captured, right, by artists, and the various ways that they've been collected by institutions. So a lot of performance, or the tendency of performance is to be remembered through the lens, right, through video documentation, through photography. But then we also had works where memory was filtered a little bit differently, and through the hand. So one example is this 10-meter hand-drawn scroll by a Singaporean artist, Jeremy Hia. It kind of chronicles over 2 decades of his performance art journey. And then in the back on the right, there's a painting by a South Korean artist called Rim Dong-sik. So he was practicing from around the 80s in Korea, and he revisits his past performances through oil paint, and sometimes as long as 40 years after the performance was performed. Here's another view of the space. It was really designed to be as open as possible so that we could accommodate more performances and activations. On the left here, we have a performative installation by Singaporean artist Izam Rahman. And then there in the background is almost kind of like an open living archive by a Korean artist, Nam Hwa Yeon. Here on the left, we have documents from Xie Zexing's one-year performance, 1978 to 79. It was the piece where it was a year-long performance where he confined himself to a small cage in his apartment under conditions of severe restraint. So all these photos that you are seeing were taken just before the exhibition opened to the public. And the idea was that as performances happened and left traces in the room, as people came and went, they kind of did their own small interventions in the space, that the room will shift very subtly in various ways. So so this project was really, it was exhibitionary, right, in its at its core. And so we put a lot of thought also into the various exhibition touch points, and one of them being the wall text and artwork labels. Because performance relies so heavily on the body, we really wanted the body to come through in our text as well. And this was not just in the way that the text was written, but also in the way that they were actually made. So here we have Rafiq, who is the graphic designer who I worked with, and he quite literally puts the Rafiq in graphic. So here's him hand painting our wall, the exhibition key visual, and our wall text. And then at the same time, I also set myself this back-breaking challenge of handwriting all the artwork labels in the space. So in my mind, at least, it was a way of staying close to the artworks as well. So interpretation was also very important, or rather keeping or creating a space for visitors to interpret or think about the work on their own terms without necessarily being influenced by a very prescriptive or authoritarian wisdom voice. So the artwork captions were deliberately kept descriptive instead of trying to unpack everything, and every single caption ended by posing a question back to audiences to rest with. And this was either an invitation for them to think a little bit more about the work, or really to bring the performance back into the present by connecting it back to themselves in that moment. So we offered response cards for them to write down their thoughts. And I think when we first decided on this approach, I didn't know what to expect. And I was initially quite afraid that no one would want to write anything. But I also couldn't have been more wrong, because over the months, we've had some of the most thoughtful and generous and sometimes even surprising reflections from the audiences. So every week after the weekend, this is what I look forward to the most, coming back to the office. Selected responses are then pasted on the wall next to my original label to kind of create a growing and very informal conversation. So, and then as you can see in the center image, I also get suggestions for future exhibitions. So yeah, other rooms in the house are coming up next. So we also introduced action cards in the space. And these are very simple prompts that invite audiences to perform a small action in the room. And we rotate the cards over time. Some of them, like the one in the middle image that you see, proposed by our participating artists, which also I see as a kind of way to extend their engagement, right, with audiences beyond just their works or the scheduled performances. So you can think of these action cards as micro performances that are, of course, optional to do. They are safe, very low effort, non-intrusive to other visitors who might be there. And the reason for this really was just that, thinking about how we now live in a moment where our bodies are so surveilled, they're so regulated, and where most of us are also honestly quite numb from the glut of digital content that we consume on a daily basis. So in a very small way, these cards were kind of a way to allow us to step outside of our heads and maybe back to inhabit our bodies, to notice ourselves moving, pausing, or even breathing differently, even if it's just for a very brief moment. So the space and exhibition was truly designed for human presence. And so, I love it the most when I see it well used. So here we have images of people using the resource area and gathering for the performances that we've had so far. So over the next few slides, I'll just walk through a number of performances that we've been very happy to post. This first slide shows images of Izam Rahman. He is revisiting a series of talcum powder performances that he first carried out 10 years ago. And the work was titled "Allow Me to Introduce Myself." And in returning to the work 10 years later, he decided to reintroduce himself. And for that performance, he really brought with him everything that has shifted in that amount of time, the changes to his body, his evolving relationship to the material, and I suppose most importantly, a different way also of relating to himself. And then immediately following Izam's performance, we had also a very powerful performance by Brian Fuata. He really infuses any space that he walks into with his mere presence. So this performance was about 40 minutes of improv. He was drawing inspiration from the exhibition, the works, audiences, using his environment as material and inspiration. And after it ended, it left no physical traces in the space. So there are no objects or no photos to show that Brian was even there, except one artwork label and an audio piece that was written for our visually impaired audiences. This is by Jeremy Hia, who revisited one of the performances that he had documented in his 10-meter throw. So basically, he had stuck his head out from underneath a table, and then he invited people to eat from a rain of food and drinks that he was throwing on himself. So those first three performances kind of took place in the opening weekend of the exhibition. And then the next few, they just concluded over Singapore Art Week in January. So here we turned the gallery space into a working hair salon for a Korean artist called Kim Garam. And here she was also offering free haircuts to interested participants in exchange for conversation. So we managed to turn the gallery space into a functional hair salon. Yeah, and that's me in the chair. I look kind of glam, but I'm not. I think I'm just really listening to her very intently. Why I participated was also that I figured that I should experience it so that I could talk better about it. Next, here over 4 days, we also hosted daily activations of Ihera Noara by Nam Hwa Yeon. So this work was conceived as an open living archive, and the work gives a speculative form to a very important but also under-documented 1934 performance by Korea's modern pioneer dancer Choi Sung-hee. So that is Choi in the largest photograph in the background. Every performance lasted 15 minutes, and it was really an attempt to kind of reconstruct a dance, right, that had been lost to time. This one was not a performance per se, but rather it was kind of a strategy to grow a work over an 11-month duration. So we were working with Wong Hoi Cheong's Lalang Archives. This was a performance that he first did in 1994. And I think this case was really an experience of taking some real risks and liberties in representing an archive outside a regular display of passive objects and documents. So we were growing Lalang around the space, and through, to its fast growing and kind of like invasive nature, it will also encroach and invade other works as the exhibition progresses. Maybe there's a chance to talk more about it when during the Q&A. So before I move on to just highlight one particular case study, I wanted to pause on this slide for a moment, because I think that post-performance hugs are simply the best. And I think because the body knows that it has just shared something very vulnerable, right? It knows that it has done something difficult. People put themselves there on the line in real time, in real space. So we have Brian and Izam there sharing a moment, and they had never met each other before, except on that day itself. They didn't even watch each other's performance. And yet, in that moment when both of them came out to greet the audiences, there was just this immediate sense of recognition and trust. It's one of those things that I think performance does very quietly, but also very powerfully, that it creates a shared bodily knowledge that just doesn't need any kind of explanation. So, okay, just moving to the last part of the presentation, which is to highlight one work from the exhibition as a kind of case study, just to unpack a little bit more the whole process of trying to re-present this work. This work is Knitting the Future by Chia Chuya, and it is a durational performance which was first commissioned by Sam in 2016 for the Singapore Biennale that happened the same year. So it was commissioned, exhibited, and then it was collected by Sam after. So the two images on the left, they show the gallery space in which the performance took place in. Basically over a period of 5 weeks, 6 days a week and 6 hours a day. Chuya sat in this gallery knitting a full-length garment, but instead of working with yarn, she was really working with hundreds and thousands of strands of lead. And on the final day of the performance, put on the completed garment, and then like in the image on the right, she stepped forward with her arms outstretched, and just offered it, to the crowd that was gathered outside the gallery. I was there to see it, and I remember her looking very emotional as, all around us, applause erupted from colleagues and from friends who had gathered there to watch her mark that moment. So when the exhibition ended, the garment entered Sam's collection, also together with a video documentation of the work and an audio log of the performance. But then at that time, we also knew that the organic nature of the garment meant that its lifespan was going to be uncertain. So over the many years in storage, the garment's condition changed in ways that we were not able to anticipate, and also I think didn't really expect. So of course, the first most obvious change was that was the color of the garment, right? Where its greens and yellows gradually darkened to become browns and blacks. The material was also giving off gases that, on one hand, were not only accelerating its own deterioration, but then it also raised health and safety concerns for those who were coming into close contact with it. So eventually, conservators assessed that the garment was extremely brittle, and they didn't recommend us to display it upright. So the only option really was to kind of lay it flat, which was quite different from our initial hopes of hanging it in the space like a regular garment. So it was really at that point of time where we were forced to confront a difficult question, which was, what does it mean to care for a work whose material life is already moving towards its end? You know, so what you see in this image is the garment being prepared for storage, and it's kind of been kept this way for, I would say, for almost 10 years since it was acquired. So it's surrounded by sorbents to absorb the gases that it was releasing. And this kind of housing wasn't a one-time solution, right? Every couple of years, it had to be refreshed. It required ongoing labor and time and resources just to kind of slow the garment's deterioration. But eventually, it became quite clear to us that, yeah, we had to confront the limits also of this approach, because it wasn't sustainable to try and conserve this work forever because of the material. It also didn't offer a meaningful way for the garment to be seen or encountered again, right? So the question was no longer simply how do we keep it, how do we preserve it, but whether preservation in this form was even still responsible, was even still made sense, right, as a way to care for the work. So if the approach was neither preserving the work in any meaningful way, nor really allowing it to be encountered again, then what exactly were we caring for and for whom? And so that was when the conversation was also taken back to the artists. And together with Chuya, we began to imagine what it might mean really to care for the work differently, by maybe allowing its final phase to unfold with dignity again through performance. And the decision was to invite her to return for a closing ritual. Not to restore the garment to what it was, definitely not about having Chuya make a new dress, as many people had wondered, but really about being there to witness and honor its full life cycle, right? Its making, its transformation, its degradation, and eventually its rest. So in that sense, performance became a way that we thought about letting go with intention and recognizing that caring for something doesn't always mean holding on to the object itself. So here we've got a few more images that show the garment in an isolated room in the conservation center. But the machines that you see are air extractors. So they were installed to kind of draw away the gases that the garment was emitting. So you also notice from the edges of the photographs that protective equipment had to be worn by anyone. So there were the gloves, the lab coats. We wore masks, and in some cases, really serious gas masks and goggles. So yeah, I mean, it just reached a point now where it was not really no longer about preservation, but protection of the object, of the people around it. So yeah, so this is how we decided to display the garment in the gallery space. It needed a corner room, so kind of its own isolated environment. It was sealed up. We had scavengers that were positioned at the base to continue absorbing the gases. And then we waited for Chuya's return in January, when the next phase of its life would unfold. So Chuya arrived in Singapore about 2.5 weeks ago by this time, and she was so happy. She was so emotional to be reunited with the garment after 10 years. But I also sensed there was some kind of hesitation, and I completely understand, because it's just never easy to return to this labor of love and knowing that you have to confront this reality of having to say goodbye to it. Moments like these are really rare, I think. Artists don't often get the chance to meet their works again under such conditions once works, enter a national collection. But here she was, invited into the decision of what the garment was going to become next. So on the day of the performance, we brought the garment down from the space to the performance space on level 1 of where Sam is. It was a requirement that it needed to take place in a more open air setting because we were going to unseal the case, right? And the gases from the material needed to dissipate. So we laid the garment on the floor. We helped Chuya prepare the space, arranging the objects that she'll be working with. And I shared this with Bill and the speakers earlier that about an hour before the performance, Chuya actually came to me, and there was really a sense of hesitation and I think some kind of reluctance on her part of not being quite ready to part with the garment because it was a real labor of love, right? 10 years ago. And all I could do in that moment was to say to her, I completely understand. Just do what you feel is right during the performance. And it was really then that I fully realized maybe what a big ask it was. Yeah. So by the time that we were ready to begin, a crowd had also gathered to witness the performance, and Chuya, approached the garment very slowly and carefully, and she put it on. She managed to put it on one last time for the performance, and as she performed, she was also sharing this story with all the people who were present, speaking about her relationship to it and really of what it means to let something go. So after performing, a series of actions with the garment, she folded it and then she put it into a second and smaller display box, which we then brought upstairs to the gallery. Audiences were also invited to follow behind her. And as they moved through the space, it was almost like a funeral procession, like a very collective witnessing, right, as the garment was laid to rest. So here's the garment in its final resting form in the gallery right now. We are currently producing a video of the new performance, and once it is ready, a second screen will be introduced into the space to kind of track or to trace this evolving journey of the work. In fact, I would call it the afterlife of its afterlife, right? Yeah. So yeah, okay. So this is just the last slide to show the parallels and the repeated gestures of the two performances 10 years apart. And as someone who had the privilege of watching the performance 10 years ago, when I, standing with her arms like out like that, I recognized it immediately, and and my heart started to hurt. And so I realized that maybe in my work at the museum and in this show, I'm also just trying to make the conditions possible for the same sense of bewilderment that I felt years ago watching Nguyen and Jason Lim perform. I try to to create moments or to create opportunities for audiences to get that moment when maybe you don't fully understand what you've just seen or not able to articulate it. And that is completely okay. But you know that something has shifted for you, and that is all that matters. That is the end of my presentation. The living room continues to run for a few months, many months. Actually, it's just been extended to 2nd August, so this date is wrong. We are planning a series of clothing programs, so stay tuned, and I hope more people have a chance to visit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yen, for such a earnest presentation. I really hope to speak with you and everyone else during the Q&A. So we have left the house and its educational fun board game to visit the living room to witness this closure poetic ritual. And now we're going to enter the stage to see some theatrical with Vân Đỗ. So please, Vân, the floor is yours.
Let me share my screen. Okay, yeah. Can you guys see it?
Yes.
Okay. So, hello everyone. My name is Vân Đỗ, and I'd like to thank Nguyễn Art Foundation for hosting this talk, giving me the chance to reflect on the ongoing project that currently on view with them. And also thanks to Ian and Waew for agreeing to give this talk with me. And I very much admire your work and your ways of thinking and working with performance artists, the histories and their very specific conditions. So today I'd like to share my methodology in working on the Footlook project, and more specifically how I approach the exhibition Footlook Through Whose Eyes, as an attempt to think through curatorial practice through translation. So before going further, I'd like to briefly outline the structure of the project. So Footlook is a group of performance artists founded in 2010 with 6 members: Nguyễn Huy, Vũ Đức Toàn, Ngô Thành Bắc, Nguyễn Văn Song, Hoàng Minh Đức, and Nguyễn Dương Hải Đăng. They are among the very few performance artist collectives in Vietnam working until today. And in my opinion, their ever-expanding practice is an important but under-recognized contribution to contemporary art in Vietnam and also in the region. But when I first approached Footlook, I proposed a retrospective exhibition to mark their 15 years of collective practice. The artists were a little bit reluctant with the idea. They thought of their own past works as a graveyard. And as they are still practicing, they have no desire to return to their own history. They told me that if I wished to dig up their grave, I could do so with the full freedom, but without their involvement. So eventually what we agree on is a split structure. Footlook would produce new commission works, which later formed the Footlook How Are You exhibition as an acknowledgement of the ongoingness of their practice. And I in turn would take responsibility for Footlook Through Whose Eyes, conceptually and practically, and they would only give me advice only when I need it, and I ask for it from them. So like anyone working with performance history, I began with the gathering documentation. I gather as much materials as possible I could from Footlook 15 years of practice, oral history from artists and collaborators, photographs and videos from various sources. And I'm deeply indebted to friends and colleagues who generously share what they had to me. So collecting, indexing, and annotating this material formed the first phase of the project. But I'm faced with the question of how to present it. And the easiest way would be to present it as it is, but doing so would risk going against the artist's wish not to look like a graveyard, and against my own wish for the exhibition to perform itself, whatever it might mean. So this left me with only one option: not to exhibit the archive, but to translate it into an exhibition form. But by having full freedom to interpret and make an exhibition on their practice, my concern this time was less about authorship, but more about ethics. In attempting to shed light on a lesser-known practice of Footlook specifically, and of performance art in Vietnam broadly, I risked transforming it into something else. In translating a live and time-based medium into something time-bound and static, would I also make it unrecognizable? So 2 conversations with 2 artists, friends, were very important in helping me think through this dilemma and contribute to the conceptual framework of the exhibition. In my conversation with Toàn, one of the artists in Footlook, he emphasized that my exhibition is only one way of looking at their practice, not a replacement of their original work. And anyone who wished to learn about their original work could still access the documentation materials intact. And more importantly, as an artist, he told me that he prefers seeing my translation rather than returning to documentation that had already become quite fixed in the past. And another important conversation I had was with Sikan, an artist and filmmaker friend of mine based in Bangkok. She suggested that the task at hand was not to reconstruct the archive, but to produce one in order to depart from it. So this conversation shifted my approach to the exhibition. The exhibition now would not function as a container of history understood as something complete or finished, but perform a situated proposition that reactivates the past without sealing it. So history in this sense remains something partial, contingent, and is always shaped by who writes it and when. So what does my translation consist of? Rather than attempting to reconstruct their 15 years of practice in an exhibition space, the exhibition established a structure in which the translation and the original documentation material could coexist without collapsing into one another. So the exhibition space is organized with 2 entry points, as you can see on the screen. A narrow hallway to the left side of the exhibition of the space houses the 15-year archive of Phụ Lục, comprising all accessible original materials, including photographs, videos, written documentation. And but the archive was beautifully designed by Nhật Võ from the Nguyễn Art Foundation, who translated the digital archive that you see at the beginning on the website into a minimal yet very evocative physical form. Transparent photos that open and close according to a straightforward chronological sequence. So the archival space functioned as a footnote to the exhibition space. And the main exhibition space, the site of my translation and adaptation, occupies the larger area and is divided into 3 smaller zones. Rather than representing specific works, each zone operates as a translated assemblage of selected methodology, materials, and objects drawn from Phụ Lục and through my own interpretive position. The assemblage points back to themselves in the documentation materials. So on the screen, you can see the first assemblage, titled Still Life Study Number 1, which consists of a still life painting made in space, drawing from Phụ Luk's system of objects. Some objects were borrowed, others were reproduced. This assemblage draws from what might be described as the collective's early theatrical stage, shaped by their formal training in the Vietnam Fine Art University, where they were all trained as art students, and a French inherited art student where color, movement, light was strictly treated with rigor. So you can see on the screen that is the earlier performances. So what matters here is not only the significant role of objects that they consistently insisted on placing in the most honored position of their practice, which is saturated with their personal, familial, and national histories, but how these objects might be arranged in space according to their inherent logic, which bears strong reference to classical painting principles. The second assemblage, sound exercise number 2, takes the form of an inventory of sound and non-sound, housed within a self-storage system that resembles Phụ Luk's exhibition Skyline with Flying People 4, an exhibition that took place in a commercial self-storage facility in Hanoi called Mini King Kho. So here I selected both units of sound and non-sound, either because there's no existing video documentation that capture the sounds of the performance, or because certain sounds that cannot be recorded at all, such as the sound of an eyelid blinking into a glass of water in one of Buck's performances, of holding a toy bird in the mouth in one of Luke's performance, or lights flashing every 30 seconds in one of the Phụ Luk's performances in Nha San studio. So the list of sound and non-sound is presented in an employee timesheet. Another performance tool that appear twice in their performances, as these sounds also have to work for the duration of the exhibition. So acts of storing, stuffing stuff are also recurring gesture in Phulook's practice, both in their keeping of objects and in their spatializing mini king core storage unit as a site of exhibition. So these structures reappear here to store the artist's own sounds or the absence of them. So, but each unit ultimately contains nothing physically, emphasizing the poetics of the implicit and the nonverbal in their practice. The third and the final assemblage, titled Light Exercise number 3, resembles a delegated performance in the form of light. Drawing from Ngô Thành Bắc Light Symphony, in which Phulook's members were invited to perform live with the solar panels that connected to the exhibition space, and from Phulook's strategy of delegating their presence to stand in for labor forces, such as the white-collar workers, Grab drivers, or manual laborers, I asked Phulook to entrust their presence to the sun by making only one choice: the position of the solar panels on the rooftop of the Nguyen Foundation. So the sun performs on their behalf each day, transmitting flickering light into the final exhibition room, dancing in response to the levels of shade and light each panel receives each day. I like to end by briefly recalling an essay by literary critic Trần Ngọc Hiếu on translation. It is an essay that I read perhaps 8 years ago that has an impact on the development of this talk. He started the essay by asking which works of William Shakespeare could be associated with the phrases Hoa ngõ hạnh, in English can be translated as beauty, alley, flower, and Trăng Tỳ Hải, moon leaning ocean. These are Bùi Giáng, a so-called mad Vietnamese poet working in the 20th century, translations of Shakespeare's Othello and Antony and Cleopatra that challenge the sense of authority that a translation has in relation to an original. Not only that they are unfaithful to Shakespeare's works on a word-by-word basis, they also bear images imbued with the mysticism of an antiquated poetics, very much characterized by his free and wide writing style. Bùi Giáng considers Shakespeare's plays to be ancient romances, and to translate such a sensibility into Vietnamese would demand the usage of lament and longing of the Vietnamese poetic artistry, such as that of the Tale of Kiều. So my translation of Phulook, which I am now still unsure if I did a good job or not, I hope stays faithful to their practice, but might not be faithful to its form. Being faithful to form, both to the original work, which is their live performance, and the form of the archive, which is documentation material, is thus unfaithful to the internal logic of their practice, and also unfaithful to the exhibition as a form itself, which demands different methods of making and thinking. And at least if afterlife appears to be a matter of a text outliving itself, or of history performing into the present, I'm forever thankful and grateful for Phulook for allowing me such a space for experimenting and being unfaithful to them. And I think because of that, their work lives on. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Vân. And thank you to Waew and to Nguyen as well. Your vastly different approaches and projects have gone to show the massive creative rigor that has gone into the making of your work and your exhibitions. And I can see in all of you this equal obsession, with the archive, with, of course, performance art, and your sickening attention to historical details, but also respect of artistic integrity. And so I wanted to start our internal discussion with questions on curatorial responsibility and the problem of loss. I can see that in all of your projects, each of you have had to deal with an excess of materials, stories, gestures, lived experiences that could not be held at once, and that should never be held in one place, that no one single exhibitions or public program or board game or reenactments or restaging could do justice. And so I want to ask, when you choose to foreground certain traces of the works, of the performances, when you choose to include certain documents, objects, testimonies, gestures, when you choose to reenact or recreate particular things, particular moments, what else did you have to decide to not to include or emphasize in your process of exhibition making? Because I think, you know, we're here working with materials that are already ephemeral. They belong to a particular kind of art that in each of our respective contexts, whether in Singapore, Thailand, or Vietnam, was once or still continues to be considered marginalized. So when we already work with materials that are so fragile, how do we deal with this question of what to include and what not to include? So maybe that's my question for you. I would love it if one of you or all three of you could tackle.
I guess I can start.
Why not?
So okay, I definitely agree that performance by nature produces more than say an exhibition, right, can hold. And like you've mentioned, the excess goes beyond the things that are tangible, right? Like the maybe relics, props, sketches. Because equally importantly, they're the intangible things. And those are things like the memories, the effect, even smells and sounds. And I really realized that when we opened Chuya's case, because the smell was just right there in your face. The relationships also that form in a performance, forms of embodied knowledge that exists on the part of both the performer but also the audience. I would say that every performance kind of has its own intent, right? And each one leaves behind traces differently. And these are also very often shaped by the wishes of the artist. So personally, I think as a rule of thumb, there is no single framework for deciding what to include, exclude, or emphasize. In the case of the living room, because it is a collection-based exhibition, we necessarily had to begin with what already existed in the collection, and then we work from there. So maybe I can use Izam's work, for example, right? I think in that case and in other cases, I found myself resisting the urge to be exhaustive or archival. It doesn't mean that if 20 objects or if 100 objects exist, we need to show all 20 or all 100 of them. So Izam's performance with the white talcum powder, it finally culminated in that installation that you see in the gallery space. And even though we had photographs from both the 2016 and the 2026 performances, I chose not to put them into the exhibition, partly because I wanted the objects to speak for themselves. So leaving that kind of space open for audiences to look at the installation and think, oh, what happened here? And of course, yeah, I did have audiences and our docents comment that they would have liked to see the photographs of the original performance also. And I completely understand that impulse. But then for me, the installation itself already carried a very strong sculptural presence. And if you were to really be with the work, like you spend time with it, you move around it and you will notice traces of powder that had been left on the ground from the performance. Izam's fingerprints on some of the glass jars because he handled them. the garments and the shoes that he left behind. And all of these things, even though very quiet, they also point very insistently to a human presence that was once there and is now no longer. And to me, it was beautiful as it was. And especially, you know, at a time when documentation is just so easily accessible online, that I felt the exhibition didn't need to have to replicate, that function. So I guess that to say that I don't necessarily see the filtering, right, as a kind of loss. Maybe instead it's about having a point of view of thinking how you'd like to craft or create or open up that experience to audiences, right? Instead of over-claiming or over-explaining, something.
I think in response to your question, Bill, in the process of making the exhibition with on Footlook, I kind of realized that the more I do it, the better I understand that the absence of the live performance is there. So both the archive and the exhibition point to the absence of the live performance. But for me, what I would like for the exhibition to do is to maybe expose or to reveal something that probably seeing the live performance cannot really capture. So you have a very fleeting moment that you are there experiencing with bodily with the performance, but maybe after a while, after looking at their practice for over time and how it evolves, I think there is something kind of reveals itself, and I think that's what I'm trying to do with the exhibition. And while the archive is there for everyone to have a different perspective and to even challenge what I come up with as my own point of view, but it's really free and accessible, so it kind of also invites people to also take another look at it.
And how was it? How was it for you, Waew? Because as I said earlier, I was surprised to find out that the exhibition came after the archive was already in place. So in many ways, your exhibition is a response to the wealth of the materials, of the data that were included in the archive. How did you deal with realizing the archive into this exhibition format?
This is I think that my approach is quite different from you guys. You know, like, actually I start with the archive first, like, and Jumpon also have like very long work with the accumulate with his materials and objects, and also his record from or documentation of the performance art. So at the first place, actually, what I deal with is he bring his life, all of his life, since the 70 something to me. Like, he gave me like 5 hard disks to working on, like, so I feel like my working with the archive is more like a Marie Kondo, like, you know, I have to organize things. and I will answer your first question first. Like, I have to select it because, like, he gave me everything, all of his personal documents, and I have to, like, oh, this is too personal. This is his personal data about his bank account, his previous ID card, his passport, everything. You know, like, oh my gosh, and I have to, like, this and that. This only can go and public on website. And also, like, you know, at that time, like, what is fun, like we in the 90s, like early 2000, we don't have like the idea of privacy, right, in the world. So I have not only him, because Jumpon has long working, he the founder of Asiatopia, right? I also have like an address and email and telephone number of the artist, performance artist around the world. So it's like, no, this is cannot. Even the artist get like, oh no, this is we cannot like publish all of this time like now. But so it's like for me, it's like have to select it what is like beyond or involved with the privacy. There are part like so it's quite hard. Or even now, like a lot of work that involved with other people that I cannot publish right now because I think the hardest thing to do is asking the permission. If you it is a quite hard like and Asiatopia work for the 100,000 of the artists for all this year. I cannot ask anyone permission to do that because like we have like they document everything. Plenty like 1,000 of photography, 1,000 of video. So what I try to do is just manage all this file together in the hard disk. And for his the physical material, like I go to his house and I organize like all the text or because like he's quite not I think he also an archival himself, like he kept a lot of like article about art that's published in the newspaper during the 90 and 2000, and he keep it quite organized, and I have to do digitize all these things, and also the object that I found that it's become like in that you can show and see in the exhibition, like because is a object that part of his performance. And so that's why when I decide to do an exhibition, I think, I'm sick of all of that. I'm working all about we use like a Google Drive and to like as a can share that everyone can work in the same time, right? And we have to sit on the computer all day to working with archival material, so many sheet, and we and try of it. So when we're thinking about the exhibition, so I try to combine the material, the real material, the real object, and you have to see the object with the video documentation. Like it's the same thing. So that is I want to like picturing to the other people that not only you, I'm not like being not do like a real performance, but I want people to see the object with the video of the performance itself together in the exhibition. That's why that's the reason. Yeah.
Thank you. What I have already, what I have also been very surprised with is BCCA's and also Singapore Art Museum's receptive attitude towards, yours and also Yen's playful take on not only the displaying but also the activations of the exhibitions that take place throughout the period of the exhibitions. And this goes to show how willing institutions are in experimenting with different formats when it comes to displaying an archival exhibition. With Vun's case, for example, I remember talking to Vun right at the beginning of the project where, as she had beautifully explained in her presentation, it was both the artist's and also the curator's wish to not create another archival exhibition. So then the question was, if we're not creating an archival exhibition, then how does a not archival exhibition going to look like? How is it going to feel like? And because of our emerging status, Nguyen Art Foundation was very willing to kind of go along with whatever suggestions. And so, here I kind of want to talk a little bit about institutions institutional needs and desires. All of your projects emerge at a moment when performance is increasingly welcomed by institutions. During Art Week in Singapore, performance art was also, one of the highlights of the event. Yet historical performance in Southeast Asia has often been defined by censorship, by regulation of bodies, and by informal modes of circulation, of presentation. Why do you think the curating of performance remains and performance art feels particularly urgent now in Southeast Asia? I mean, personally, I can see that all three of you have this beautiful personal relationship with your own artists, but aside from personal needs, what else have been the reasons that push forward this need to curate, to archive, to showcase performance art?
I think so I think performance art in the Singapore state obviously has a kind of like a fraught history, right? Leading to performance to be seen as maybe an art form that is kind of rebellious, uncontrollable. So it's been misunderstood, which then of course also because of regulations then impacted the way that performance was allowed to take shape, right, to be practiced, and then to be circulated. And I'm sure it is also the similar case across Southeast Asia. With this exhibition, I think I was also very cautious about the history, and but the premise of the exhibition was more so a museological interest in how we deal with performance remnants. And I kind of wanted audiences to encounter, the performance and the works as they were without the baggage of the past. And that's why the living room was kind of conceptualized the way it was. Responding to the question of how come, I guess maybe this what we observe as institutions being more open, right, to showing performance art and its archives. Just from a personal perspective, I think that what feels very relevant about performance today, maybe it's less tied to trying to address or trying to correct that history, but it is more tied to this broader sense of the kind of embodied presence and attention, sustained attention, and maybe collective gathering. All these are things that have become increasingly fragile in this day and age, and performance offers that opportunity, or the way to work with time, the way to work with bodies. It is very relational as an exchange, and maybe that is the relevance, and why we gravitate towards such kind of practices.
I think in Thailand, I think like we have like a lot of performance. Like in Bangkok and Biennale, there's always work with the I forgot the name.
Marina
Abramovich. Marina, every year, and even like Asiatopia that filed in 1998 until now, but we don't really archive all of this history together. That's why I think archival is very important. Like the performance is always about the temporary. We're talking about the event. We're talking the perform, and we have to feel that in the real space, real perform. And when it's become to an archive, and how we can, what is it? How we can like define this material. And for the Jumpon, we have been working, and how we call his work that has been recorded. Is it a video art or video documentation or other thing, like, and I have been talking to the young performance artists. They also said that they have to like perform with an object or photograph their work and can sell as an photograph. But for Jumpon, that is quite different, you know, like, and he still like don't want to do something like that. He just want to perform. And when we doing an archive, and that at that time, you know, like that maybe I don't know the time is fit perfectly, and the one who proposed the artwork to the OCAC collection at that time try to propose Jumpon work, and Jumpon let me introduce or recommend the work to them. So that's why I they collect all the hard series of Jumpon performance. It is like a series of his documentation. So we have like so we have like to think about what we call about this work. Is this a video? And when we exhibit it, it's quite like we exhibit in a single channel video installation. So it's more like a video installation more than like a documented the work from 90 something like that. So I think but the archive is very important. But Jumpon also think that if he can be collected by the collection of the government this time, this will be like when we have been talking about this a lot, like how important that. So you can. This is like the open stage for anyone that your work, your performing, your performance can be collected, not only an object or material, but the video in itself, the documentation in itself can be still collected.
And this is one of the good news, no, that came out of the exhibition. The work was collected by the government now.
Yeah.
And is this the first time that this has happened?
Yeah, for the performance art.
Wow, so pretty historical.
Yeah. Jumpon and I also said about this. We're very, very important, you know, that we don't have to like translate it into the photography or something like that. Yeah. And you can see like this, all the old video, somehow like an old footage, old video, we can still send that in the video. Maybe it's a keep like the old performance, like still living, I guess. You can send the environment. Yeah.
And I hope that in the near future, more performance art will enter the collection of the government. Because I think this will send a good signal to other governments.
Yeah. Oh, true.
Vân, what do you think?
I think personally, I cannot say for like institutions, but I think generally, in my opinion, performance art has like complicated relationship with the government and not with institutions. And I think here we have like a public institution, we have a semi-public institution and a private one. So I feel like it's the people inside the institution that has been pushing it, and towards the reception of both the public and the government. So institution here is kind of act as a mediator, and I feel like it's mostly because of the people that is working inside it. But but if I'm not so positive and if I'm more cynical, then probably also because the kind of performance that having more acceptance from in general is like something that is less about resistance, less about political response or something. So that's something on top of my head.
Yeah, I think those are very they are good things to think about, because if we look at the history of performance art, both in the West and also in this part of the world, this has always been an art form that is known for its political and activist edge. And so what does it mean then to kind of transform this form and make it viewable, make it acceptable within the space of the institution? I think these are the questions that both institution makers, people who work within institutions, as well as curators have to kind of think about carefully, no? And also we understanding that we are treading a gray area where we want to both pay respect and honor an art form that deserves its place in the world stage, while also wanting to push the institutions we're working for and working with to change the way of looking at art, while also trying to connect with the wider public. So it's a very, very kind of fragile, but also it's a tough job you guys are playing, I would say. All three of your projects, because the talk, the theme of the talk today is the afterlives of the live performance. And I can see it so clearly that in all three of your projects, you resist this idea of closeness, of things being closed, being ended. Instead, all of your projects propose activation, rereading, reperformance, and recirculation across times and communities. And so there's this need almost to kind of keep the life going. And I think it's such a beautiful attempt to not turning performance art into something overly stabilized or historicized. Because that's the beauty of exhibition making. You have the right and the freedom to make it more creative, make it more open, reimagine it. But in this sense, I want to ask about the role of archiving in your work. How do you then choose to practice, to trouble, to transform the work of archiving? Because an archive at the end of the day still needs to meet particular regulations, expectations. It needs to be readable, understandable by the wider public. So how do you deal with this need to stay creative, stay open, while also maintaining the readability, the mobility of information?
I actually think that in Waew's exhibition, you did it very great. I actually learned it from you, where you have two parallel timelines, Chumpong timeline, and more like social context, like events happening in Thailand, but also globally that coincide with his timeline. So I think it's something that is I think it's very helpful to do something like that for the archive, because I think in general artistic practice cannot be read without the specific context, especially performance art. So I think it's very, I appreciate it a lot.
Thank you. If someone want to ask me a question, what shall we do?
Sorry, we have one question which I will read in a little bit. Does anyone want to add to the responses?
So
Nguyen, maybe because you work very closely with, you work with Sam, you work at Sam.
I think for this exhibition, I didn't deal with the archive as much as Van and Waew have dealt with the archive in theirs. In fact, I think the best case would be Hoi Chong's Lalang, where actually, we have collected over 100 objects from that performance. But in the end, with the artist's blessings, I made the choice to only show a video and instead grow lalang in the space based on an image of lalang that the artist had drawn. So I think that was it. I mean, I was very insecure about the decision, but it was kind of a gamble because it was an exhibitionary kind of experimentation. So I'd say that I'm tempted to see the archive as less of a place than a practice. And what I mean when I say that is that rather than treating it as a repository of something that has passed, we treat it as something that continues to grow and build through activation, restaging, and conversation. So in that way, it's just always happening.
I'm thinking about how to answer you, and I mean just like in Thailand, you know, like the national art world in Thailand is actually for the contemporary art, not only the performance art. Like everything have been kept by the artist or a private one, not for the public. You know, like we don't have like an so-called Thailand Art Archive, something like that. So we don't have. When we don't have it, and if you want to look for something, you have to go to the university library, which is it's public university, but it's not accessible for everybody to go there, something like that. And moreover than that, like I say, that the archive have been kept by the artist himself, and how one can access to the artist, it's quite hard, you know. For even a young curator right now always asks me how to get into this person or this generation of the senior one, the master one. So that's why I thinking about doing an archive, or the archive that I have been done, not only Jumpon. Like I also do an archive for Ajahn Sumpon, Lord Bun, the pioneer of curator, and of like archive her writing and publish into the book. And I think that the way I have to do it is because I want people to access it easier, so I'm more accessible and free for anyone. And I try to do it more and more, not only performance art, but I think it is important for the Thai art scene as well, because like we have like more and more when we are talking before the talk. We have a lot of happening in Bangkok now, but the scene, most of the scene are private sector. Deep also a private museum. We have like only BACC, that a public institution, that the only one who support the contemporary art. So it's just one. And all the happening now from the private, like Kuntala or Deep or Mayam. So we have like in hard time. No, it's not hard, like, but yeah, it's quite different between the private and public institution. Like, and I'm lucky that all the archive that I have been done have funded by the government. So it can be free and it can be accessible. But we have to do, you know, like, because like if we don't do this for me, like because I think that I'm the bridge between this generation from the master generation, and I have to bring all his material, his archive, so that I bring that to the public now. People can read it, reinterpret it, or even adjust it or critique it. Yeah.
So
if I don't do that, it will be like the life of it will be die in the artist's house. I want it to be still live or have an afterlife, not a symmetry of the archive or material.
Thank you, Waew, for the sharing. We have one remark from the floor one of our we have two actually. So shall I read out the first one comes from Professor Nora Taylor, and I'm just going to read it out. Thank you for this very interesting conversation. I would like to hear from the presenters whether they consider performance art today to be inseparable from documentation, rather than an art form that exists as a live art form only, and one that is curated after the fact. So basically, I think the question, the remark, and the question contrasts, right, or put into conversation two ways of understanding performance art. Performance art as not being separate from its documentation, meaning the documentation is not secondary or after the fact, but is part of the work itself. And then the other way of looking at performance art is performance art equals purely live, primarily as a live time-bound event. And the documentation happens afterwards, and it could be considered a kind of a curatorial or archival act and not the artwork itself. So that, I think, is what the remark and the question is pointing at.
So personally, I know of artists working on both ends, okay, of the spectrum. So someone like Brian Fuata, who often at times does not document, or even if he does, very rarely chooses to show it. It is purely live, and it's almost a case of, you experience it best in that moment, and if you miss it, then that is it, right? You miss it. But there are also artists who are thinking more and more about documentation, not in the sense of say just photography and video of their performance, but performance for the camera.
Yeah.
And so it is, right? It is a kind of like a different kind of I won't call it a genre, a different approach where it is tailored especially to a recording device. And so those are kind of the two, and of course in the middle are the different ways of documentation. I think where the institution comes in is that we have this impulse to want to remember everything, to want to document, to want things to last. And if I can share like a chat that I had with Chuya, she said that, working with Leek, she always knew that it was never meant to last, but it is only when the museum came in and wanted to acquire the work and wanted to ask questions about its longevity that she started thinking of ways to preserve her object. So I think that we cannot underestimate the institution's influence in some of these decisions that artists make. Yeah.
That is very true. I kind of can I just greedily take the stage for a little bit. I just want to share two things. As a performance artist myself, I really think that at the end of the day, it is to do with the materials and the mediums that feel like it could preserve the integrity of the work the best. It's whatever that is available at hand, and whatever mode of presentation that as artists we feel, okay, this is how the work is. Like you said, Ian, some works are supposed to be seen through the lens, some works are supposed to be seen live, for example. So it's really down to the work itself rather than the maker. But then the second point I like to add was similarly to Shia's work, we have a work by a female artist like Thi Ha in our collection that is made of dried pork skin. So we're facing similar issues with how to remember it.
Yeah.
knowing very well that this is not to be alive. This is not meant, we're also at the point where I'm so thankful that you have shared the procedure and the process that Sam decided to take with Chia's work, because that could be a beautiful case study for us at Nguyen Art Foundation. Well, and Vân, do you have anything to add to Nora's remark?
Actually, it depends, like, sorry, like,
You go
Jungkook-
first.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Like, for Jungkook's work, somehow in his series, he set the camera himself at the first case. But also, like, it sounds like he's thinking about as the camera will be as part of like his performance as well. And when we saw it and as an archival, it is how he document himself. Yeah.
Yeah, I think in my experience, I've also encountered artists who kind of romanticize performance art as something that can be purely experienced live and can never be restaged, or like any other ways of presenting performance art can never be equal to the live experience. So, but then I also have worked with artists who kind of conceptually push the thinking of documentation as another version or another edition of the same work, which I also find very interesting, how they can see different ways to conceptualize their performance practice. And I think it's really not up to not really up to us or as curators to really say on behalf of the artist, but we can also like play along or respecting their wish, but also to come up with different ways to present it.
So I can see that we're unfortunately running out of time. We have one more questions from the floor, and then if any of you three have any questions for one another, please feel free to ask. But before that, let me read out this question. A question for Yen. What would become of the garment after the exhibition closes? Would the preservation continue? I'm also curious to know if the team has prepared for the worst case scenario as the work, as part of the publicly funded collection, can no longer be saved.
Yeah, thank you for that question. It's yeah. So earlier in one of my slides, I showed the way that the garment is kept in storage, right? Currently being preserved, and every couple of years it has to be rehoused. All the kind of the solvents have to be refreshed, and its housing needs to change. The plastics and the cardboard all needs to be changed. So this new performance by Chuya of laying the garment to rest and putting it in a second display box will actually eliminate all of that need for the garment to be preserved. So from this point on, the garment will just reside in that second display case, and we are just going to see how it responds in storage. So there were a lot of uncertainties, that we were working with coming into this performance. Things like how brittle the garment was, which in the end wasn't really brittle because Chuya performed with it and it stayed largely intact apart from some pieces that fell. And so we are hoping that the garment will defy our expectations again. And we were joking about revisiting this maybe in 10 years' time just to see what the garment is going to look like. And so of course, there is I think every museum has a de-accession strategy, as much as we always try to avoid it. But in the really very worst case instance that the government, without being conserved, continues to deteriorate past the point that it really no longer makes sense to even keep it, then that is an option that we will be open to exploring with Chuya, of course. She knows it, of course. Yeah. And I don't know, maybe it'll become another performance and another work. Yeah.
Finally laying it to rest.
Yeah.
Right? To not be so obsessed with preserving all the time, I guess. So speakers, do you have any questions for one another? This is your time. It's okay also if you don't.
I think for me, what I am most inspired is how much risk, Ian, you have to take when you work within the museum setting and work with performance artists. Because I feel like for independent spaces, it's not a problem, but it feels much more like restrict, to do it in a public museum like Sam. Yeah, but just a remark, not a question.
Yeah, it was a very challenging process. We had to work very closely across departments, not just within SAM, but also with external agencies like the National Heritage Board, who is the legal custodian of the SAM collection, speaking to the legal teams, the national collection teams, because there has never been a case where we have intentionally altered a work in the collection. And while we were thinking about, the concept and the ideas behind all of that, we also had to think forward. What if this set an unhealthy precedence for artists who want to say, hey, I also want to alter my work in the collection. What will we do? Not to say that it's very possible, but it is not impossible. The likelihood is not zero. And so we also had to think about all these mitigating factors, right? How would we explain ourselves? And especially because we are accountable to the public. So even things had to be managed.
So I'm thinking the quite similar thing for Yen's work. I think that you have been like invite the artist perform like several times for the exhibition. I think, oh, that's amazing. How can you do that? Because like I think it's quite hard. I have been talking about the exhibition with Jumpon as well, and he also said that like the performance artist, if the exhibition should be lively, like an event all the time. And how can we do the performance like 8 hours a day, like for 3 months for a museum? How can we do that? No, we cannot do that. And so when I see your project, it's so amazing. Yeah.
To be honest, when I see and read about all of your projects, and this is a remark that I shared with all three of you earlier today before we publicly started the discussion, I think there's a certain level of craziness and recklessness that curators, when working with performance art and performance remains, need to have. And I think this is due to the fact that we spend maybe too much time with artists, and their craziness and recklessness and creativity gets rubbed off. But to that end, I have to thank you for staying true to your desire, staying true to what you believe in what needs to be done. You have really shown all of us today what it means and how else to exhibit performance and its remains. You have also demonstrated how we can think of performance art and its afterlives not as fixed points, but as points of departure, as points of conversation, as points of playfulness. And so I want to thank you once again, Vân, Yen, and Waew, for this lively and fruitful conversation. I really hope that we'll be able to meet in person very soon again, and Waew for the first time. Thank you to our lovely audience for staying with us for 2 hours. I hope that you have found this public program nourishing, and I hope you'll return more and more to more programs that Nguyen Foundation will be hosting surrounding both the exhibition, the Follow projects, and also other things. I can see a lot of emojis being sent around the room.
I think Ling still raised her hand.
Oh, really? We have one person with one question? Oh, really? Okay, so this is a question for Vân, but I think we can send it to Vân privately. Okay? Yes. It's past the time now.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
There's regulations. All right. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
And we'll see you all very soon. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.